Okay, so we're gonna solve by taking the square roots. So on this first one, okay, you're going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, because you have this squared isolated, you're gonna take the square root of both sides. Okay, when I take the square root of 0, what am I gonna get? 0. Okay, on the other side, I'm gonna get x minus 5. Okay, so how am I gonna go about solving this now? Add the 5 to both sides. And so that's going to give me x equals 5. How many real solutions does this have? One real solution. Okay. All right, so make sure that your cell phones are put away. All right, on this next one, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, but this time when I take the square root, what's the square root of 1? Positive 1 and negative 1, right? So this is going to have 2 solutions in this instance, and this turns into 2 separate equations. So this is going to be x minus 5 equals 1, and x minus 5 equals negative 1. So then we're going to add 5 to both sides. And so that's going to equal x equals 6. And x is going to equal 4. All right, let's try this next one. I'm going to write it up here, though, so that way the people in the back can actually see it. Okay, so this is x minus 5 squared equals negative 1. So when I take the square root of both sides, this is going to give me x minus 5. And on this side, when I take the square root of negative 1, what am I going to get? When I take the square root of a negative number, what do I get? It's I, right? Okay, so we're going to have a positive and negative I. Okay, you were moving too fast. Exactly. Okay, so then I'm going to add 5 to the other side. And so that's going to give me x equals 5 plus or minus I. How many real solutions do we have here? Okay, no real solutions, but we have how many complex? 2, because we have that positive and that negative. Okay, so 2 complex solutions. All right, I want you to take a minute and kind of think it through these 2 questions. What's the same and different about these 3 problems? And how do these similarities and differences affect the solutions? Take a moment. I want you to write one sentence telling me what the similarities and the differences are and how they affect the solutions. Okay, so what is the same and different between these 3 problems? So what do you notice? Okay, so looking at the original problems, okay, we said that this has 1 solution, this one had 2 solutions, and this one had no real solutions, but it had complex, right? Okay, so with that being said, how are these problems similar? What do they have in common? How are these problems similar? Like looking at the originals, what do they have the same? They have this x minus 5 squared all on the left-hand side, right? Okay, what about the right-hand side? How are they different? Okay, so if something is equal to 0, it's always going to have 1 solution. So for instance, we have this x minus 5 squared. When we actually solve this out, we are always going to have 1 solution. It doesn't matter what's on the other side. Okay. For this, if we have something squared and then we set it equal to some number that's positive, we're always going to have two solutions. Okay, if we have a negative on this side and then nothing else over here except for the squared in parentheses, we're always going to have a no real solution. Yes? Okay. All right, so today we're going to find complex solutions to quadratic equations by completing the square. So we're going to kind of continue what we were working on yesterday. So complete the square to find the solutions. How many solutions do these have? Okay, so on Wednesday, we were using algebra tiles in order to help us. This time, I'm actually going to give you the formula for how you solve this. Okay? So we're going to take we're going to take C and move it to the other side. All right, I hope you're writing this down. Move C to the other side. So this is going to subtract 49 and move it to the other side. That's our first step. Now, our second step is going to be take your B term, divide it by 2, and square it. So our B term in this instance is 14. We're going to take 14, divide it by 2, and then square it. Well, what's 14 divided by 2? And 7 squared is? Okay, so 49. So we're going to add 49 to both sides. Okay, so we're going to take B divided by 2, square it, and add it to both sides. Okay. Our next step is going to be to factor and then combine terms. Okay, so on this side, we're going to write this out in factored form. The easiest way to write this out is to say x plus whatever your b divided by 2 term is, which is 7. And we're going to say squared. And when we combine this side, we're going to get 0. I'm going to take a second and pause. Okay, so now we can actually solve this out. So this has become a problem just like what we started with today. Okay, so now we can take the square root of both sides. Okay, and so that's going to give us x plus 7 equals 0. We're going to subtract 7 from both sides. And so our final answer will be x equals negative 7. Okay, so when we're solving by completing the square, these are our steps. And our last step would be to actually take the square root and then solve. Okay. Again, I would suggest writing these 4 steps down because the process is kind of confusing if you don't. This one. All right, so the first step is to move that C to the other side. Okay, so we're going to subtract 13 and move it to the other side. So this is going to give me x squared minus 8x minus 13 plus blank. And add it to both sides. So we're going to take b, divide it by 2. So take negative 8, divide it by 2, square it, and we're going to put it on both sides. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, and negative 4 squared is positive 16. So we're going to put that on both sides. So now we're going to factor and then combine like terms. So on the left-hand side, when we factor this, it's going to be x minus, and whatever your b divided by 2 number is, that's what the number is going to be right here. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4 squared And we're gonna set that equal to negative 13 plus 16, and that's gonna give us 3. So again, when you factor this, just remember this is the same thing as whatever x plus b divided by 2 is. Okay. Or you can just factor normal. That's okay too. So now we're going to actually solve it out. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. When we do that, and I'm going to write this up at the top so that people can see it. That's going to give me x minus 4 equals positive and negative square root of 3. We're going to add 4 to the other side. And so our final answer is going to be x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, now how many real solutions does this have? 2, because it has that plus version and that minus version. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. Ready? Okay, yeah. I haven't worked it yet. Hold on. Yeah, let me try it. Okay, so we're gonna subtract 27. Okay, so we're gonna get x squared plus 10x equals negative 27. We're gonna take b divided by 2, square it and add it to both sides. So we're gonna take 10 divided by 2 and square it. So what's 10 divided by 2? 5. What's 5 squared? 25. Now we're gonna factor. So this is gonna give me x plus 5 squared equals negative 27 plus 25 is negative 2. And now we're gonna take the square root of both sides. So when we do that, that's gonna give us x plus 5 equals positive and negative I square root of 2. Okay, and the reason why I'm gonna write it like this is because we've got this negative, and when we take the square root of a negative, we're gonna pull out an I. Okay. We're gonna move 5 to the other side by subtracting it. And so that's gonna give us x equals negative 5 plus or minus I square root of 2. How many real solutions does this one have? 0. Okay. And we could have seen that actually at the beginning when we move this negative 27 to the other side. Okay, because remember, if it's got this square root, I'm sorry, if we have squared on one side and then we have a negative on the other, it's gonna have a complex solution. Okay. Any questions over this one?
I got confused when it said the second step was like you did the 10 divided by 2,
Uh-huh.
and then you did 25, so I was like, you did the 5 line.
So 10 divided by 2. Yeah. So you're gonna use this part. This is all coming from exactly what we did yesterday. Like this process is actually what we did when we did the box. You remember how we did, all right, we took x squared and put it here. And then we took 10 and divided it into 2 pieces. And that would give me 5 little ones here and 5 little ones over here. And then I was like, all right, well, how many boxes are left here? That would have been this 25. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this next part. So let's look at the graph of these 3 functions. How do the graphs show the solutions? Okay, so the first one, the answer was what? Look at your paper. -7, right? And where does it cross the x-axis? At -7. Right here, our solution was like square root of like +2 and -2, right? Okay, and look at where it crosses that. Right around that area. Okay, on this last one, notice how it's not even close to the x-axis. Okay, notice how it's not even crossing the x-axis because it has a complex solution. Okay, so we can look straight at the graph and see that. Now, if a is greater than 1, you must divide all the terms before you can complete the square. All right, so before we even start anything, if all of these are divisible by the same number, we're going to divide out first. And then we're going to actually complete the square. Okay, so if they have a GCF and they have a number that's bigger than 1 for my leading coefficient, then we're going to divide by that all the way out. Okay, so what's the next step I'm going to do here? Move C to the other side. And so this is going to give me x squared minus 4x equals -2. Then what am I going to do? Take -4, divide it by 2, square it. So -4 divided by 2 is what? -2. -2 squared is what? What's -2 times -2? +4. Okay. And so now I'm going to factor this side, right? So this is going to give me x minus 2 squared is equal to 2. And now what am I going to do? If I'm actually going to solve this out, what am I going to do? Take the square root of both sides. And then add that 2 to the other side. Okay. All right. So on this one, you would add that 10 to the other side first. And then I would go ahead and divide out that 3. So when I divide everything by 3, I'm going to get x squared minus 4x plus blank equals 10 plus blank. Now you can actually solve this one out. Okay, so go ahead and take a moment. From here, I want you to take your b term, divide it by 2, add it to both sides, factor, and then solve. All right, we're almost done. All right, so we're going to take b, divide it by 2, and square it. So -4 divided by 2 is -2. -2 squared is going to give me 4. When I factor this, this is going to give me x minus 2 squared. And the other side is going to equal 14. Now, when I take the square root of both sides, that's going to give me x minus 2 equals positive and negative square root of 14. I still want x by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And that's going to give me x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 14. Okay, the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is this little stop and jot. So you're going to put this on a sticky note. So you can write it down on your paper and then transfer it onto the sticky note, but I want to see your work on the sticky note. So you're going to put your name and you're going to put your answer as well. Please show me your work. Please don't just put the final answer because that doesn't do me any good. This is telling me what you've learned. Okay, so go ahead and take a moment. You're working on this problem that is up on the board and you're putting it on the sticky note. Okay.